Moving on to our next session, we have Mr. Tareq Bagaeen, Senior Consultant, Hotstats, and Founder, CEO, Aqedina. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Bagaeen.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Hi, Lada. Good afternoon. Hi, Stefan. Okay, it's kind of a quiet room, but I'm one of those people that when I talk, I like to look at the stage. I really know the slides quite well, so I hope to see audience engagement. I hope to see your eyes up, looking at me, paying attention. There's numbers, gonna give you a headache, and then when we're done, because I'm not gonna take all my time, I think we'll definitely have some time for questions, so please pay attention, and thank you in advance. All right, so first of all, let's start to look at some data. I'm gonna do up, going down, squeezing, all focusing on food and beverage and GOP. So let's look at that. Everybody's been talking today about food and beverage and restaurants and all of these different areas, but where is the money? 4 lines, black, blue, red, and yellow. Now if you look at the black, let's ignore that top one for a minute, that's total RevPAR. Let's look at the blue, that's rooms revenue. And this is India, or basically South Asia, which includes Sri Lanka and the Maldives as well. So if you see, there's seasonality. Rooms revenue starts high in December, January, dips in summer, then grows up again. But the red line, that's food and beverage. Doesn't move that much with seasonality. Normally, you would expect if rooms revenue is increasing, food and beverage revenue is going to increase because there's more people in the hotel, because there's more demand. But that doesn't correlate to this market over here, and in the remaining slides, you'll understand why. The yellow line underneath, that is basically banqueting, CMB, conference and banqueting. And also, it doesn't move. There's no seasonality. And that's kind of interesting as well, which is not normal. You don't see that in existing destinations with significant MICE business, like Singapore, Hong Kong, or Dubai. But it happens here, which leads me to believe a lot of this revenue comes without rooms connected to it, and a lot of it is local, so there's a lack of international MICE business. And total RevPAR, of course, hovers a lot with rooms, because rooms is, 3/4 of the revenue, basically, and conference and banqueting and F&B make up the rest of it. Now, let's look at GOP as a percentage of total revenue. And this is India, Asia. Let's look at India versus Asia, the red versus the yellow, first of all. So if you see the red line, India's GOP as a percentage of total revenue also doesn't move very much. It basically hovers at around 50%. So it's really quite interesting. There's not much impact on seasonality. But if you look at, let's say, Maldives, the blue line, it moves up and down like valleys, again due to seasonality, because leisure business is impacted that way, while India doesn't move at all. If you look at Asia, Asia is moving a little bit. It has a bigger dip in low season, but Asia is nowhere near as profitable as India. India is one of the most powerful destinations in Asia, if not the most powerful, and definitely the most consistent when it comes to GOP as a percentage of total revenue. And you might be asking, where does this come from? Where does these data come from? Well, they come from your hotels. All the hotels that are contributing data, like for example, if you look at all the different hotels that were here, the Marriotts, the Hiltons, the Accors, every one of the hotels that is managed, all contribute their data. And all this data is not touched by man or woman. It's not touched by anybody. It's basically extracted from the finance system of the properties, and mapped according to USALI, which is what many of you hotel operators or owners look at your numbers. It's all based on the uniform system of accounting for the lodging industry. That means what? That means every single number here is comparable from any hotel in India to a hotel in Timbuktu. It doesn't matter. Makes the data 100% accurate and 100% comparable. Now, let's look at this one. This is South Asia versus India. let's look at the blue line, F&B revenue change, 22 to 23. And basically, 2022, F&B spend per available room grew from 15% to 20%. So there is growth in F&B spend between the year 2022 to 2023. So that's, again, another good sign. India looking strong. This I like. This slide, and I'll keep it there for a few minutes. This is really interesting. Let's look at Sri Lanka, Maldives, and India. That's 2022 over there, and this is 2023 over here. This is basically where the money is coming from, right? So you've got restaurants, bar, room service, and minibar. If you look at India in 2022, minibar was $0.4, basically nothing. 2023, $0.5, still nothing. Right? There's no interest in minibar. It's not worth it. It actually loses money because of the investment of labor and stocks and the equipment you actually buy to put in the rooms. Nobody cares about minibar expenditure. If you look at room service, Sri Lanka was $2.6 per room in 2022, and Sri Lanka grew to $2.5. Actually, it didn't grow, it dipped. India was at $4.6 and went up to $6.8. So that's kind of good as well. But basically, still room service, not a big one. But Maldives, and that's what a captive audience does for you, right? That's really the power of an audience that cannot leave the hotel, cannot go anywhere. And you can see minibar spend was $31. Was $12, room service was $31, bar was $43, and food was $209 in the Maldives. Look at the revenue that they make because of captive audience, right? And you might be thinking, well, hotels in cities like Gurgaon and Delhi and Mumbai and Bangalore, they cannot have a captive audience. They cannot, because people can get in a car and leave. But if you have interesting outlets and people eat there in the hotel, that they want to stay, then you can get more revenue coming in. India versus South Asia. Basically, where is the money coming from in terms of conference and banqueting and outlet revenues? So other F&B revenue, before you ask me what it is, basically if there's a cafe in the spa or club lounge, you might be able to serve some alcoholic beverages to charge and things like that. That goes in there. Minibar is of course insignificant in India. In South Asia is significant because of the Maldives inclusion. But basically here it's kind of 50-50. Conference and banqueting revenue is pretty much 50%, and outlet revenue is pretty much 50%, right? And that's really very impressive. And in South Asia, it leans more to outlet revenue, again, because of the impact that Maldives has on those numbers. If you look at growth, this is conference and banqueting revenue per square meter change, 23 to 22. So it tells you who did better in 23 versus the previous year. Vietnam grew, but not great. Jakarta, Singapore, Bangkok, all have been growing quite well. Dubai didn't grow very much because they already had a powerful 2022, not because 2023 was bad. Let's look at the Indian cities. Jaipur, for some reason, they had a dip of 25% in function room rental, while if you look at Bangalore, that's a 205% increase. So there must have been some kind of huge government or delegations or some kind of big mice business that happened in Bangalore in 2023. Hell, maybe actually even happened here, I don't know. But basically that skewed the numbers significantly. Delhi's doing well. So overall, growth all around in the conference and banqueting business. This is to give you a bit of hint on beverage spend. So let's look at the blue line, the dark blue line is India, and the gray line is Maldives. Again, to show you the impact of revenue and where it's consumed. So if you look, this is per customer. Let's look at this side. There's actually some conference and banqueting in Maldives, but let's ignore that. It's too small. Minibar in India, it's $0.03 of a dollar. Again, not even a number, but a lot of alcohol being spent in minibars in the Maldives. If you look at room service, there's a lot more alcohol being spent there. If you look at bar, a lot more alcohol being spent there. And if you look at restaurants, a lot more alcohol being spent there. Where does India have spend on alcoholic beverages, it's much more on banqueting and events. That's where the revenue comes. It's not really in restaurants or bars and so on. So there's definitely room for growth and an opportunity for that. So this is the breakdown in terms of cost. So the circle on the left is India, that's South Asia. F&B expenses, other expenses. Other expenses are like menus and various equipments that go into the restaurant and so on. That's about 9.2%. Labor, 16.5%. Cost of sale, 23.6%. F&B profit, 50%. Very strong. In fact, the highest in Asia. F&B costs. Let's see where the money comes in. The costs. So you saw, I told you supplies, menus, glassware, uniforms, and so on. That's luxury, full service, and select service. Let's see where it costs more to run F&B operations. So select services, pretty much. Other expenses, not much of a big difference, but full service seems to be quite costly, but no real significant variance. Labor, very interesting. Select service actually has a higher percentage, and full service and luxury, very equivalent cost of labor. These are non-management and management wages, again indicating the labor cost. It's higher in select service, while beverage costs, and this is very interesting, and I really honestly, I don't understand why it's such a big difference that beverage costs are 33% in select service, while it's just 25% in luxury. How does that happen? Maybe the pricing isn't as high, makes the cost higher, I don't know, but it's a very interesting cost. But food cost is also the same. Cost of food in select service hotels is higher than in luxury or full service, which hurts the profitability. So all in all, I see that there's definitely opportunities for growth. People can spend more money in your outlets. They're not spending as much as they should. They're not spending as much as they do in other destinations. Beverage is a very big part of the revenue game, and there's definitely opportunities there as well. Looking at your profitability in rooms versus F&B, India is very consistent. If you see the graph, you see the dip of COVID, of course, but you see how rooms division generally is hovering just over 80, 85, and now coming close to 90%. And if you see food and beverage hovering around 50%, a few dips in the rise after COVID, but now hovering pretty much at 50%. And India is very consistent, very strong control over cost of operation, not very expensive to do business, which makes the destination quite profitable and strong. Last slide, flow-through. Food and beverage flow-through in India versus Asia. Let's look at the dark blue versus the gray. India's at 53% flow-through, Asia's at 42%. F&B profit 50 versus 32%. 32, 50. How much more profit can you make if you're able to generate more revenue? This is huge. That's a lot of money can come in. Look at rooms. Rooms, the gaps are much smaller. So Asia's, let's look at F&B, rooms for 77.7%, while in India as well, the profit is higher, but nowhere near there. The opportunity in food and beverage is enormous, and the profit margins are there if done right. And that's really the model, and that's where I want to end. There is money to be had. India is a great place to do business. Look at total GOP. India ran at 44.5%. All of Asia is at 35.6%. You can make money here. You need to make more money to make more profit. So the point is now, what are you doing with your outlets? What are you doing with your operation? What are you doing in marketing and revenue and yielding? What Puneet was talking about. What everybody else during the whole day today said, you need to understand where the opportunities are and go after it, because there is money to be had. Thank you very much for your attention. We have another minute. If anybody has a question, please. Yes? Yes. Yes. Correct. Thank you. So the cost of sale for a beverage was a bit higher than the cost of sale for the food. When you take the cost of sale for beverage and food, combine them together, you end up with the average of the cost of sale. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. I really need to check the number exactly because I don't have all the numbers memorized, but I'll pay attention. We can look at that. I have the slides with me. Any other questions? No? Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bagaeen.